We're joined now by Eric O'Keefe, the editor of the Land Report, who is out and about traveling. So we appreciate the connection. You track so many things with the Land Report, but I will say, as an observer, I'm fascinated by the sleuthing that it takes to compile all of this. How is that done, and how has it changed over the years?
Well, thank you. First of all, I appreciate the compliment. I'll accept it on behalf of our extensive team that follows these landowners all year long, keeps in touch with them, earns their trust, works with them to highlight all sorts of activities that are taking place from coast to coast on their properties. Now, I'll be straightforward. A lot of them deal with NDAs and confidentiality agreements that they can't violate, and they won't share with us specific facts and figures on numerous occasions. But when it's a public sale, when it's a major auction, when it's a transaction that draws headlines, we get a lot of information right off the top, and that's exceptionally important for us, because we monitor not only the existing Land Report 100ers, but we also monitor former Land Report 100ers, because just because you've sold a property doesn't mean that you don't have an eye for additional properties and are looking for an opportunity to 1031 or to get back into a great piece of property. So we do it word of mouth with the landowners, with brokers, with auctioneers, with appraisers. We obviously use a lot of technology to, from a database standpoint, to be able to go online and look at county records and do searches that way. And finally, of course, there are news stories that some of them are current. And I was just looking at one from the New York Times that ran in 1974 in their archives. So we have to really dig deep to find out some of the provenance, some of the chain of title when it comes to these large properties. And of course, keep in mind that, the floor for this year's Land Report 100 is its highest ever. It's 156,000 acres. And so there are all sorts of different properties out there that we have, not only 156,000 and above, but we monitor all sorts of properties below that as well.
But when you look at some developments, I'll use Facebook and Microsoft as examples here. As they begin the process, they essentially have kind of a code name, as then they work with local governments and such as they put together incentive packages or whatever, get the zoning laws changed, all that kind of stuff. When you're talking about farmland and some of these developments that you've tracked, it's so frequently not as simple as Bill Gates Farms or what have you. How
Correct.
Complicated is
Correct.
that when there are so many other ways these can be set up, especially without that well-known person's name in it?
That's a great question, and one of the elements that I think has to be recognized is that most, particularly farmland, they're usually accumulations of tranches of properties. There might be a grouping that was owned by a pension fund on the Great Plains, or in the Midwest, or in the Pacific Northwest. And I honestly believe that there is not a purposeful attempt to keep those transactions hidden. But the flip side is there is no incentive, and in many instances, there is no drive to trumpet or to talk up those transactions. It's a, excuse me, it's an interesting catch-22. These investors are not, they're not trying to stay below the radar in terms of being duplicitous or secretive. Just doesn't add anything to their returns to trumpet the fact that they've acquired these institutional portfolios. And so for that reason, yes, it does become difficult. And that is why, for instance, when we follow and look at and work with different brokers nationwide, different reporters nationwide, and keep an eye on breaking news as far as farmland, as far as ranch land, as far as timberland, as far as recreational properties. It's interesting, and I'll point this out, Dave. It's fascinating to me that the best reporting we typically get is from small town newspapers, and that shows you the value of those small town presses that are, that local 20,000 acre farm is a major employer, has been a significant portion of the community for decades. And to see a change in ownership, leadership status is news. And it may not make it in the flagship state capital, largest city metropolitan paper, but it might make it in the small county press. And so we monitor those, and our team looks at and follows them all year long. It started out as, like so many other research initiatives, a lot of on-the-job training in terms of how to do it better and better and better. And I still think, we have room to improve.
As you've been tracking this for years now, and I'm curious, just anecdotally, a lot of times when you have a family farm, the expansion comes from the owner next door who retires or maybe passes away, and the heirs aren't going to stay into the business. As you track these larger landowners, what are the themes you notice with them? Are they coming in, and do they prefer these really, really large connected areas, or are they getting here a location, here a location, here a location? Is there anything anecdotally or even empirically that you've noticed?
I would assume that the ones that come to mind, and this is across almost every land use, whether it be farmland, timberland, certainly ranching, adjacencies are obviously crucial. They can be scaled up very easily from a management standpoint, the additional properties. The drivers behind that, when you point out someone who's retiring, someone whose heirs no longer have any interest, someone who passes away and the heirs decide to liquidate, I think that you're looking at a situation where acquiring larger tracts or tranches is just more efficient and can be more easily. I think the phrase is you get more juice from the squeeze there, right?
Right.
And so being able to acquire, it's not to say that there aren't, individual isolated parcels of any sort, obviously starting with the donut, the in-holding, obviously starting with the key adjacent property. But it's not to say that there aren't, particularly from a farmland standpoint, because I feel like farmland changes hands so infrequently compared to other land use types. We all know that when a great piece of ground comes to market, it may not be 40 or 50 years before it comes to market again. And so a larger landowner will pay a premium, or as we say, buy early, in terms of acquiring a piece of property that is that strategic fit in terms of the puzzle.
You mentioned this earlier in the conversation, but you have tracked this as our largest landowners are getting larger. They're and it's substantially larger as you've tracked this over the years. Is that a trend now you can see continuing, and
Yes, I think.
what's pushing that?
Well, I think one of the things, and your listeners will really identify with the fact that the value proposition when it comes to land, investing in land is crystal clear. I don't care if you go to University of Northern Iowa data, Cornell, Cal Davis, Texas A&M, Florida State. The gradual, steady increase in the value of land, all types of, whether it be irrigated, dry land, timberland, ranch country. That data is in place and it goes back decades. And so, from an investment standpoint, the basis is already in place, indicating what a great value proposition investing in land is. But what's really become the icing on the cake are these new additional opportunities that have been developing, and we see them coming to market across all land uses. We've been following carbon credits now. It's rather new. It's still hasn't gained wide acceptance, but as our 2022 deal of the year, with the sale of the Forest Land Group's portfolio for 1.8 billion, 1.7 million acres, indicates, there is a lot of resources being directed towards carbon credits. Obviously, renewables. Obviously, the opportunities, and you see that quite often with farmland. The possibilities now with transmission lines and substations. What is going to, I personally feel that one of the biggest opportunities is going to be around water, which will tie into recreational, tie into ranching, and tie into timberland in terms of their water resources. So you've got, like I said, that baseline appreciation, and then you start building all these other layers and other possibilities. And some of them may include, transitional land, obviously, as cities grow and gobble up more. Here I am in Texas, and we lose a section of land a day to development.
Right.
640 acres gets on a daily basis. And so as much as it's a shame to think about, pasture and farmland that is being turned into residential neighborhoods and commercial malls and schools, on the other hand, one of the things that I always keep in mind is the success of those owners who are no longer selling their farmland or their pasture land for agricultural value, but are now getting transitional value in its place. And that's something that can benefit a family that's been on a property for generations.
For sure. As you've tracked this, I think the People magazine side of this is that you really come across some famous people, and you just wrote about Drew Bledsoe, who will also be at the Land Investment Expo. But can you share a little bit about, and you've known him for a while, he was a top-notch quarterback. He just had a horrific injury when he got hit on the field back when he was playing for the Patriots, and that really opened the door for Tom Brady to step in and launch his career. But now he's in the wine business. What kind of guy is he? What really stuck out in the profile piece that you all had with him?
I've always been, Drew is such a down-home Walla Walla, Washington guy. He's a hometown boy done good. And I've always been impressed by that. He still acts and treats people like he's a hometown boy. He's not a pro bowler. He didn't have, when you look at his 14-year career, the teams he played for, his passing records, single game single game attempts and single game completions. That record still stands to this day. And yet, when you meet him in Walla Walla and are talking with him, people literally came up to us and asked about his dad, asked about his mom. He was there at the Bledsoe family winery with his wife, Maura, and they couldn't have been nicer and more welcoming, like a typical small town business owner. The only difference is this small town business owner is, played in the greatest gridiron battles, coast to coast. And so I was really, he's a really enjoyable, loves his wine, very passionate about. I love that line that he told me. He's very selfish when it comes to wine. He makes the ones he wants to drink himself. I thought that was a wonderful take on what his passion is, and he's putting that into building the team that he's created at Bledsoe Wine Estates. He mentioned that Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, had been a key mentor for him in what he's done building the Patriots and winning all of those Super Bowls. Mr. Kraft journeyed to Walla Walla and met with Drew's team. And when he did so, Drew just pointed out the fact that he asked Mr. Kraft, "What do you try to be the best at?" In front of all of Drew's teams. What do you try to? Is it the draft? Is it the coaching? Is it? And his response was telling. He said, "We try to be the best at everything. We want to be the best at concessions. We want to be the best at parking. We want to be the best at guest experience. We want to," and he just went down the list and then got to the status of the operation, the team management, the draft. So I thought that was interesting that he approached that, because as I explored and got to see a bit more of the Bledsoe Wine Estates operation, they run it like a tip-top ship. And I say that because I've been to wineries in Napa and Sonoma. I was just on some great wine ground on the North Fork of Long Island, believe it or not, where they've converted some old sod farms and cabbage ground into grape ground there. And you would be hard pressed to find a more professional, welcoming group of people than the ones at Doubleback Winery and at Bledsoe Family Winery. Just a really, and that starts from the top down, and it includes not only Drew and Maura. He pointed out that his director of winemaking, Josh McDaniels, is an integral element of that organization in terms of setting the corporate culture.
It's like crediting his offensive line, right?
Yeah, it is, exactly. Giving credit where credit's due. And, we toured, we had a great meeting he sat me down. It was 10:30 in the morning, pours me a big glass of this 2021 Pinot Noir from the Willamette Valley. And I'm glad I had a good breakfast because it was a fantastic wine. And we had a great, fantastic chat. He's really vocal when it comes to his passion for wine. But as we walked out and walked up to the second floor deck of Doubleback, there were some of his employees who he just immediately just walked right over to. They greeted him casually, friendly, respectfully, vice versa. He introduced me. I mean, just like you said, it's building a team from the top down, and you could see that he walks the walk.
That is an experience you will not forget. Hey, Eric, we really appreciate the time and look forward to catching up and hearing more of these when you come in town for the Land Expo in January. Thanks so much.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on board. And I really want to follow that up and just say, getting Drew Bledsoe on stage at the expo is going to be a real treat for everybody, if you can't attend in person, sign in, get online, and watch and listen, because he's a closer. He's guaranteed to deliver.